Skydive season is here. Hip hip hooray. You have no idea what that means to me. I wait all winter long for this day. It also means that we are in Hamfest season. To that end, I'm going to answer the top 10 questions I get when I'm at a Hamfest. So come along with me. Let me give you the answers that you always ask for. The number one question I get is, when are you jumping? What time? And the answer is, I have no idea. I legitimately have no clue. If I am at the Hamfest, I have no way of knowing when the airplane is going to be taking off, okay? I am at the mercy of the drop zone and their jump schedule. If I am at a drop zone that has an airplane that holds 4 people and they are taking 2 tandems up, I have to wait until the slot's available between loads. And that may or may not come. So I have to just stand by and wait for my turn. If I am at a drop zone with a big airplane that has a lot of slots, I still don't know when I'm going to jump because I'm not there. So I don't know what the jump schedule is. I don't know how long between loads at that point in time. So the short answer is I have no clue. I know as much about my jump time as you do. The number 2 question I get, what frequency will you be using? Again, I have no idea. I have a general idea of what band I'll probably be running on, and I have a general idea of frequencies I want to try, but ultimately I have to make sure that the frequency is clear, right? I can't tell you that I'm going to be jumping and using 14652 because people very likely are using 14652, and I can certainly barge in and be that guy, but I try not to be, right? If I'm able to use it by waiting a few seconds in between QSOs and trying to say, hey, K9OL, parachute mobile, can I have the frequency? I might use that, right? But I'm going to try to jump using a frequency that ideally is not in use. And I won't know until I'm up in the sky, selecting the frequency and verifying that it is in fact clear. If it isn't clear and it's not the calling frequency, I'll probably try to, wedge in and say, hey, K9OL, I'm doing a parachute mobile, can I have the frequency for X number of minutes? But the reality is I don't know for sure what frequency I'll be using. The number 3 question I get, how high do you jump from? It depends. In the United States, we are able to go to 14,500 feet above sea level without supplemental oxygen. Now let's take into consideration how often I am at sea level. Almost never. So for example, in Rochelle, Illinois, the field elevation is 800 feet and we go to 14,500 feet above sea level, which means that I am roughly at 13,700 feet above the ground. At my home drop zone, roughly 13,700 feet above the ground. But if I'm jumping some other place, the jump altitude depends on how high the drop zone goes and where the field elevation is at. Some drop zones jump at 9,500 feet above ground level. Some jump at 10,000 feet above ground level. Some, whatever they can get to 14,500 above sea level. It just depends on the drop zone. So it varies from drop zone to drop zone and what aircraft we're in. A Cessna Caravan easily goes to 14,500 with no issues. A Cessna 182, not so much. It'll go there, but it takes forever to get there. So most drop zones that are running Cessna 182s are going to let us out a little bit lower. The 4th most popular question I get, how much time do you have to play radio? Let's break it down real easy. I'm roughly going to have 1 minute of canopy time for every 1,000 feet above the ground that I'm in. That varies, of course, because the density of air at 14,000 feet is thinner than the density of air at 3,000 feet. But let's just say for the sake of averages, 1,000 foot equals 1 minute of canopy time for me, because that will change based on how much weight is under the wing and how big the wing is. The ratio, think of it like an SWR, of wing size to weight under the wing determines how fast you descend. With the parachute that I use for Parachute Mobile, roughly 1,000 feet. Paul will have a slower fall rate because he has a bigger parachute and less weight under it. So now that we have basis of time per altitude, let's do some math. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the drop zone let me out at 10,000 feet above ground level. It's going to roughly take me about 1,000 feet to exit the airplane, deploy, and have a stable parachute over my head. So now I'm at 9,000 feet, right? Figure is going to take me, depending on the radio that I'm using. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I'm at a Hamfest and I'm using my HT or my 705 ready to go. Maybe it takes me 15 seconds to get online. Okay, it's 150 feet. So now we're down to like 8,000 and change, right? Now, I can play radio safely until 3,000 feet. I can probably go lower than that. I don't want to. I do this for fun and I want to keep doing it. So I cut off all radio operations at 3,000 feet. That's my rule for me. That takes 3 minutes out of the bottom end, right? So from, let's say, 9,000 to 3,000, 6 minutes, right? Because it's 1,000 foot per minute. Roughly 6 minutes at a 10,000 foot exit altitude, give or take, right? If I'm let out at 13,500 feet above ground level, I get more time. Works out. Just have to know that, listen, if I call QRT and you're the next person in the line, I'm very sorry, but I call QRT because my safety matters a lot more than the next QSO. The fifth most asked question I get, what antenna do you use? It depends, okay? Listen, on my HTs, I almost always use a super elastic signal stick. One of these things right here. One, it's a fantastic antenna, and two, as you can see, I can hide it away inside of the airplane and not poke someone's eye out by just simply kind of like tying it into a bit of an open knot, right? Stays out of the way. Super handy to do that. Does it mean that I won't jump with a different HT antenna? No, it means that this is my most common use. I have used others. I find this one to be the most practical for my uses. Listen, if you wanted me to jump your HT and your HT antenna, gladly I'll do so. If I have time and availability, gladly will do so. But understand that for HTs, typically I'm going to be using the super elastic signal stick. For HF, it's a different story. When I do HF, my go-to antenna is this. It's a Pactena end-fed half-wave mini. Why? It does everything I need it to do. Compact in size and reliable, not a whole lot to it. For parachute operations, HF, I can't fly anything that requires either a ground plane or a counterpoise, right? I'm able to use an end-fed half-wave because the coax shield acts as the counterpoise. I have flown many other end-fed half-waves. I've flown the Bug-Out Mini, I've flown the Dutena kit, I've flown the KM4 ACK kit, I have flown the Spark Plug, but the common theme there is they're all end-fed half-waves because I can't fly something that requires a ground plane. Well, why is that, Carlos? Simple. This antenna wire trails behind me, right? And in order to have a counterpoise, I would have to either go vertical with the counterpoise or with the antenna, or go vertical down below me with either one, and that requires weight. I have tried using counter-weighted antennas before as a test, and even with 16 ounces of lead under the antenna, the wind strength is enough that it catches the antenna wire and the weight, and it sails it back towards me. So then we end up with an antenna wire trailing behind me and then the counterpoise not so far away, and that makes for not so efficient use. I have a very narrow flight time available to me to make as many QSOs as I can. Kneecapping my antenna system that way just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Question number 6. What radio do you use? The radio that I own. For QRP operations, I'm using my IC705. Sometimes I will pair that with an AH705, but I prefer to fly resident antennas whenever I can. If I am doing a jump at a Hamfest, I'll probably be using that or my ICOM ID50. For HF, also the 705, right? But if I'm going QRO, I'm taking my 7300 Mark II. Yes, it is a beast. It weighs a lot, especially if you have to carry it in a waistband the way I have to in order to stay safe in the sky. But it's a fantastic radio, does everything I needed to do, and it suits my needs. My needs. Let's talk about why I fly the radios I fly. Every one of those radios has an SD card or a micro SD card as part of the radio, and that lets me record my contacts, right? I can't log while I'm up in the sky, and the video from my hand cam, the sound from it, doesn't always get the call. So those radios are perfectly suited for my needs. I also happen to think that they're great radios. Wouldn't have bought them otherwise, right? For Parachute Mobile, without a question, for me, I need a radio that has onboard recording. I've tried external recorders. They're not reliable for me. I'd rather take a headache out of the mix and have a reliable radio with a reliable recorder that I can take in the sky. Let's tie that number 6 into number 7. How do you log while you're up there? I already told you, I don't. I can't. It's not possible, right? If I did, I'd have to have a notebook and then scribe things down, and then, Mike, that takes time. I have a limited window. So I use the recording from the jump to then generate my log. I use Ham2K Polo to generate the log, and basically the recording of the QSO has a timestamp for the file name. So if I jumped today at noon UTC, the file would be today's date _ 1200. And then I know that if I turn the radio on at 1200 UTC, I was probably on the air by 1201 UTC, so I'll make the first contact 1201 and the second contact 1202, and so on and so forth. Sometimes my log is longer than the jump, meaning time-wise. So let's say I made 15 contacts, but I only had 7 minutes to do it in. Well, the log contacts are going to be 1201, 1202, 1203, so on and so forth, all the way to 1215. It's an approximation, folks. Seriously, it's not that important to get the exact second right. Okay? Question number 8. Can you do mode X or mode Y or band A or band C? Look, probably. But I'm doing this to get as many contacts as I can while I'm in the sky. So using some esoteric mode, probably not conducive towards that. Okay? So if you're asking me to do digital mode X or, custom radio mode Y, maybe if I've already done several jumps with everything else and satisfied everything else where I can get the overwhelming majority with a sideband contact or an FM contact, okay, now we can start looking at esoteric things. But I'm not going to go to a Hamfest and make my first jump something super narrow in terms of the population that I'm going to be able to reach. That's just not conducive to what I'm trying to do. If you want me to do mode X or mode Y, pray to whatever deity you happen to favor that the weather is great. On average, at Hamvention, I'm going to get 1 day of jumping. Not because I only want to jump 1 day, but because that's just how the weather shakes out in the Midwest in May. You end up with some not so great days for jumping. It is what it is. In Huntsville, different story. I'll probably be jumping Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if I exhaust all the possibilities on FM simplex and I have the ability to do sideband, I'll do that. If I exhaust all the other possibilities and I have the ability to do esoteric mode whatever, gladly do that. But I'm constrained by wanting to make as many QSOs as possible, so I want to get as much of the easy pickings out of the way first. Make sense? Question number 9. Can you take antenna Y or radio X? Maybe. Look, if you want me to take the radio, you're buying it. And you're assuming all responsibilities for it, right? If I lose it in air, guess what? Sucks to be you. Same thing with the antennas. If it's a wire antenna, it has to be something that I can safely fly behind me. Like I said before, I can't fly an antenna that requires a ground plane. It just doesn't make sense. So, can I take? Yeah, sure. But if you want me to fly your specific antenna desires, and if it's safe for me to do so, and if you provide it, I'll try to accommodate it. Okay? But if it's me buying it, then I'm going to stick to what I have or what I want to fly, right? Pretty simple, right? Question number 10. Where do you land? At the drop zone. No, seriously, at the drop zone. The parachute has controls. I am able to fly the parachute and land wherever I want to, and generally that's going to be back at a known safe location, which is the drop zone. Can I land some other place? Absolutely, with some caveats, right? If for some reason I end up out of where I need to be and I end up having to land some other place, I have to be respectful of the fact that that's not my property and I'm not cleared to be there. I'm very technically trespassing. So I have to look for a clear and open area that is less likely to get me into issues with people. In other words, look, some farmer in a field and his corn or beans or whatever crop might be, probably not a bad idea to use that as an out. A horse ranch that breeds $30,000 horses that get spooked easily, not a good place to land, because horses are going to get spooked. I might get hurt by them. And if the horses get spooked and they stampede or something like that, they get hurt. Who's on the hook for that? This guy, right? So where do I land? Back at the drop zone, almost always. The exception being demonstration jumps where we are intentionally going to land in a place that has been designated and we have people there looking out, verifying that our approach is clear and safe. Bonus question. Let's give you number 11. Can you jump at my event? Maybe. And that is a very big maybe. Jumping at a location that is not a drop zone brings a lot of complexity into things. As an example, recently I was approached about jumping at a Hamfest in Illinois. I looked around. The nearest drop zone that has a jump airplane that might be available is the drop zone I work at. No big deal, right? All I have to do is file some paperwork. File the paperwork with the FAA. If it gets approved, which it likely will, then I'm good to go make that jump, right? There's money involved. The cost for the drop zone to drop me off over there at that one event, close to $3,000, and that was before the price of gas and fuel went up. I can't afford that. So if you want me to jump at your event, we have to source a jump aircraft. Can't be just any aircraft, it has to be a jump aircraft. We have to have a commercial pilot. It can't be just, hey, Billy has a pilot's license, he can let you out. Nope, not gonna happen. A, I won't do it because it's not legal, and B, the FAA is never gonna approve that in the form that we have to submit to the FAA to get clearance to make that jump. In addition to that, I have to have a way of getting back to the drop zone. The drop zone easily lets me out if we're doing a demonstration jump, right? But I have to have a way of getting back because that's where all of my stuff is at. So we have to arrange for a ride back, and it can't be a ride back tomorrow. It has to be a ride back shortly after I land. I have work to do. And lastly, and certainly not least, wherever you're wanting me to jump has to have a clear and open landing area. Where can I land? I can land in a high school football field. Doesn't require a whole lot of room, right? But I need the avenue of approach to be clear in the air. In other words, if you're asking me to land at your high school and the high school is surrounded by buildings and telephone poles and power lines and whatnot, I ain't making that jump. I like me alive. I like me unhurt. That's it. 10 questions and a bonus of the most often things I get asked at a Hamfest when you see me. Look, I try to be as friendly as possible. Or if you see me making a mad dash for the exit, it probably means that I'm heading to the drop zone then. If you want to walk and talk, I walk really fast. Let's go. We can totally do that. But be mindful that I may be heading to the drop zone to try to make the jump that you're asking about. That's all I have on this one. Catch you in the next one. 7-3.